Welcome to the Tiffany Mika podcast. What we do here is build the strength and courage in you to accomplish your big dreams and goals in your sport. No longer will you feel limited. You won't feel you're not good enough. You won't question whether you will make it. Those doubts will disappear because you will have the competitive edge over your opponents and leave them in your wake. And the bonus is others will notice. Listen up and take notes because I will show you exactly how to do it. Hey there, it's Tiff here and welcome to another episode of the Tiffany Mika podcast. What we're going to be talking about today is we're really going to be talking about how to win in your sport. And the reason that I bring this up, we're going to be talking about it right throughout this week. There's themes around how to win in your sport that we'll be discussing. But the reason that I want to talk to you about this today is because this is coming up a lot, and I see this not only with younger athletes, but I see this with older athletes too that compete in golf and so on, and they're desperate to win and they're desperate to do really well, but there's things that are missing. And so what I want to talk about today is how you can win in your sport and how we can put things in place to make sure that that can actually happen. Doesn't matter what type of sport you're playing, this can apply to everything that you do. When I pose questions at you, I want you to be really thinking about, okay, how can I apply this to my sport? Okay, so it's easy to say I want to win my next match, and it's really easy to say that I want to win a tournament. But when you focus on this saying, I want to win, what that does is it puts an enormous amount of pressure on you. And I'm not saying that that's a bad thing to have the pressure and to be saying that you want to win. But what I worry about is when you say, I want to win that next match or that next game or that next tournament, the focus really then becomes about the end result. Like, I have to win it. And when you purely focus on the end result, like I have to win that match or I have to win that tournament, what happens when you don't achieve it? What happens if you lose? Because we all have losses, and that's the nature of learning. But the thing is when we lose, all the focus is on the win and like I must win. And what happens when you lose though? Because we all have losses. Doesn't matter what level that you play sport at, we all have losses. So if you have this, I've got to win, I must win, what happens when you lose? What do you think of yourself when you lose? What do you think of yourself when you don't perform as well as you'd like to? I'm a failure. I'm not good enough. I'm not working hard enough. I can't do this. I'll never be able to do this. I'm a loser. So when you focus on the win, that's actually that's actually called goal achievement. Okay? Now, that's the end result, is the goal achievement. And the thing is, though, is that you're distracted mentally by what you must be doing during your competition in the sense of performance, in the sense of you must be winning. And that's all the focus is, I must win, I have to win. Well, what happens when there's pressure on and you're not winning? What happens when you're down and you're not winning? What do you think? How do you feel? What's going on? Right, you'll be telling yourself you're not good enough. I can't do this. I'm going to give up. So how do we change that? How do we change from I want to win into something that's going to be much more productive for us so that we can produce wins, but it's the way in which we do that? Well, it's all about changing our focus. And you know what? Yep, I get it. You want to win. I've been in that situation many times. I always put myself in the situation where I want to win for sure. But the thing is to create that win, you have to actually focus on a series of what we call processes that you've got to focus on to actually achieve the win. And you know what? The win's not guaranteed either, is it? It's not guaranteed that you're going to win, but if you focus on these elements that I want you to consider, then you're going to give yourself a much better chance of actually producing a win. You're going to give yourself a much better chance of having a better performance, and that's what it's all about. And the other thing too is when you're in that competition phase and you've got to go, I must win, and because that's all you focus on, there's other things that are not guaranteed, or also that you probably haven't considered, such as the influences that will be around you, such as your opponents. You can only be dictated by as well as you play by what your opponents do as well. Maybe the conditions, like the weather, how your team performs, especially if you're an individual in a team. There's a whole heap. There's, depending on what sport you play, but say soccer, there's 11 individuals out there trying to form as a team. Then there's your coach. You can have an influence in your parents and your peers. So therefore, what we must do, we must craft a way to win. And how we do that, how we craft a way to win or give ourselves an opportunity to win, is that we got to focus on what we can control. So what are the things that we can control? I've got 5 things here for you. So make sure you got your notebook out ready for this. So number 1 is how you perform. Number 2 is how you control your emotions. Number 3 is your warm-up routine. Number 4 is your warm-down routine. And number 5, track. It's actually about your process goals. So these are the things that you can control. You can control how you perform. You can control your emotions. You can control your warm-up routine. You can control your warm-down routine. You can control what you track. So there's some areas in which you can control. Remember, this is what we need to be focused on. But you can't control what your opponents do. You can't control what the weather does. You can't control what your team does. You can't control what your coach says and thinks. You can't control what your parents say and think. And you can't control what your peers say and think. But the thing that you can control is you can control you. So let's look at that in more detail. Number 1, how you perform. So there's things in which you can really control with your performance, isn't it? It's your level of focus, what you're actually focusing on. It's your skills. So you can focus on your skills and learning to trust your skills. You can create and craft patterns of play that's going to help you create better performances. And that really derives from what you've created throughout your training. And also practice pressure situations. So you're simulating pressure situations. So those are things that you can control. And that's number 1, how you perform. Number 2, controlling your emotions. So when you want to win, what happens? You get anxious, you get nervous, you can get excited. And therefore your body has physical responses. And your body also has mental responses. You have mental responses. So it all depends on what type of responses and how you're going to cope with things. So, for example, when you get nervous or you're anxious about performing and competing, so your body responds maybe in a way that you feel nervous, you get butterflies in the tummy, you may throw up, you may have diarrhea, you may hyperventilate, you may have sweaty palms, your heart, might be pounding out of your chest. And you're really worrying about how you'll perform. And then there's other mental responses, isn't there? Like, I'm so nervous, I feel sick, I wish it would rain so it gets cancelled, I don't want to lose, I look like a failure if I lose, what will everyone think of me if I lose? Right, so you can see that in this specific example, is more about focusing on what's going to happen if you lose, what's going to happen because you're really nervous, what's going to happen because you're worried about how you're going to perform. But you can still have the same physical responses even when you're excited. Because I know, like, when I've competed, especially when I've prepared really well, I've been so excited, I still get the palpitations in the heart. I still get nervous. I still have the butterflies, but the butterflies are excitement. You know, they tend to, rather than go crazy on the inside, they're flying more in formation, and that's what we want to be able to do. Hyperventilating, not so much. I can control that when I'm excited about a game, but it's learning how to do that, isn't it? It's learning how to do that. So if we still have the same physical responses that come up, we can actually change the way in which we mentally respond. So we can create positive self-talk versus negative self-talk. So instead of saying something like, I'm so nervous, why don't you say something like, I love these nerves because it shows me I'm alive and I'm ready to compete. Just by changing the way that we actually put the thoughts into our head. What about another one, like another mental response that I mentioned just before? I feel sick. Well, when I feel sick, I take deep breaths and go for a light jog because this helps me loosen up. Here's another mental response, a negative mental response that we can turn into a positive response. I wish it would rain so it gets cancelled. I want to compete today because I can track where I improve. Here's another one. I don't want to lose. Well, if I lose, it's just feedback in areas I can improve. I'll look like a failure if I lose. Here's a response for you. At least I've had the courage to step out into the arena. I am courageous. Right? There's nothing, you're not even talking about losing in that one. Here's another one. What will everyone think of me when I lose? Everyone will admire me because I've stepped into the arena and had a go. So you can see how if we change the way we even though we may get some similar physical responses that come up when we compete, let's change the way we approach it from a mental point of view and create new mental responses. Number 3, warm-up routine. So I will talk about a warm-up routine and things that you can do in a future episode in great detail. But for now, what I want you to be thinking about is crafting a warm-up routine that's going to get you prepared for your game. So things like, what kind of skills warm-up would you need to do? What kind of stretching would you need to be doing? What kind of mental preparation would you be doing? Because this is all warming you up, preparing for your performance. Number 4, warm down routine. So this is very similar to the warm-up routine. You're warming down. So like, what kind of skills warm down could you do? What kind of stretching could you do to warm down? What kind of mental reflection, what kind of questions could you ask yourself when you're reflecting back at your performance? So these are all very practical things that you can do that's going to help you craft your way to a win, right? It's understanding how you are going to compete better. Number 5, this is my favorite, and this had a huge impact on me that changed me into a much better performer on the field, so to speak, versus one that was really struggling from a mental point of view. And this was tracking and process goals. And I'm actually going to cover this in much more detail in the next episode. But for right now, I want you to be thinking about this. What areas in your game can you track your performance? So really think about that. And I'll give you an example. Like, golf is a really easy one to track because you can track it yourself. So, but other sports, I know you may need someone to do it for you. So if you're in a sport where you can't do the tracking for yourself, get someone to do it for you, whether it's a friend or, your parent or someone close that you give them specific things that you want them to track throughout your game, so you've got some data to refer to. So what do I mean by tracking your performance? What are some examples? So golf, here's one, like your tee shots, whether they stay on the fairway, how many shots you've hit into the green, like How many shots, what I mean is how many shots it's taken you to get from the tee to the green, how many putts you've had, how many shots you've actually played into the green. So when you've had a shot to play, like an approach shot, like a pitch shot to play into the green, have you hit the green or have you missed the green? You know, those kinds of things. Soccer, here's an example, how many times you get your feet on the ball, how many passes you've made, how many dribbles past the opponents you've created, how many shots at goal, how many tackles you've had. You see what I'm talking about with regards to tracking? Be creative here. What are the things that you can measure that are process orientated? Because these are the things, if you piece all these together, these are the things that actually create the wins, right? So swimming, here's another one. Like when you're competing in a race, like freestyle or breaststroke or butterfly, count how many strokes you've actually had in that whole performance. Because you may need to have more strokes, you may need to have less. They may need to be longer, they may need to be shorter. But you don't know that until you look at the data. So these are actually process goals. So when you start to really track, you really get some numbers. You get that data. And then when you compete each time, your goal is actually to improve the process, right? The tracking of the process goals. And then this actually then leads to the wins that you're after. And this is a game changer. This changes everything. And I'll actually be talking about this and showing you exactly how to do that when I release the Get Focused program, which is coming up later this year. But for now, I want you to get really creative in some things that you can track when you're out there competing. And, you know, I want you also to be thinking about it's not just one thing that's going to create the results. It's a series of elements or a combination of elements. But this will help you get going, and this is a start for you. So I'll just recap. So the things that you can control, how you perform, how you can control your emotions, warm-up routine, warm-down routine, and tracking, creating some process goals. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that episode. This is how you're going to create more wins, but it's going to be a process, right? Not a goal, as in achievement of I must win. It's how am I going to create the win? These are the processes, what I need to actually do to create that. So like I said, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Love it if you could share with me what you like best about what you heard today. If you've got friends that you know that would benefit from these episodes, I'd really appreciate too if you could share with your friends these episodes, because we want to reach, you know, the world, and everyone's competing and getting out there and having a go, and you know, really benefiting from these episodes so that they're improving in their sport and in their life. So I want you to dream big, believe in you, and go after your dreams. Have an absolutely awesome day. Take care. Talk soon. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you haven't yet downloaded the #1 deadly mistake athletes make sure you go to tiffany-mika.com and download the #1 deadly mistake athletes make. Share with me what you like best about what you heard in the comments section wherever you hear this episode. Share with your friends that you know that would benefit from these episodes, and please leave a 5-star review wherever you hear these episodes. I would really appreciate it. Dream big, believe in you, go after your dreams. Have an absolutely awesome day.